Welcome to a wisdom tale. Today's story is called The Fairy of the Mountains. It's a Romanian folklore tale written by Petre Ispirescu, 1872. The story revolves around the love and challenges between a fairy and a prince. It emphasizes the importance of inner beauty and love. The fairy's transformation into a human reflects her deep love and willingness to make significant sacrifices for her beloved. This wisdom tale reinforces the moral lessons of love and devotion, humility and service, empowerment and transformation. It is a story about how love will always inspire generations, since true love never dies. Let's begin the story. Once upon a time, there was a very brave and wise king. Neighboring kings often sought his guidance, drawn to his just and fair judgment. When a dispute arose between them, they first went to this king for judgment. The esteemed king was known for his wisdom and fairness. His decisions were highly regarded throughout the land. Other kings trusted his discernment, and he mediated disputes with a calm demeanor and a love of peace. When the king reached old age, God blessed him with a son. It is impossible to describe the king's joy in having an heir. All neighboring kings presented him with numerous gifts, expressing their delight at the birth of a son to their valued advisor and friend. After the child grew up, he was put to study under the guidance of wise teachers. The young prince was so diligent that his teachers were amazed at how quickly he learned. What other children learned in a year, the young prince learned in just 1 week. The teachers marveled at the prince's rapid progress. It had come to the point where his mentors had nothing left to teach him. Seeing this, his father wrote a royal letter to the most famous philosophers to come and tempt his son with their profound teachings. Also at that time, there was a brave and famous hunter in the royal court. The hunter's skills were renowned throughout the land. Until the famous philosophers arrived, the king entrusted his son to this great hunter to teach him the craft of hunting. After the philosophers came, the prince also learned about the moon and the sun. The prince's education now extended beyond the realm of the royal lands. His curiosity extended beyond earthly matters to the mysteries of the cosmos. The king's heart filled with joy, witnessing his son's extraordinary destiny unfold. He gazed upon his son, who was blessed like no other king's son. The king looked at the prince as if he were the sun. So, the prince grew up becoming wiser and even more handsome. Everyone in his kingdom and neighboring ones raved about how smart and beautiful the king's son was. The prince was still young. He had not yet twirled his mustache, and yet he received numerous proposals from various monarchs seeking to arrange a marriage for him. But the prince did not wish to marry so young. One day, during a hunting expedition in the mountains, the prince repeatedly encountered a turtle dove crossing his path. He somehow felt compassion for the small bird. Despite his reputation as a skillful archer, she kept getting in his way, so he pulled out his bow and shot an arrow. He was astonished that he, such a skillful hunter, could not kill it, but only slightly wounded her wing. Still wounded, the beautiful bird flew away. Immediately after the turtle dove flew away, the prince felt something, his heart pounding. This feeling was unfamiliar and intense to the young prince. He did not know what it meant. After returning home, the prince felt uneasy. That unknown feeling persisted. Seeing this, the king showed concern for his son's health and asked him what was wrong. The prince replied that he had nothing. That beautiful bird was the fairy of the mountains. She had fallen in love with the prince's beauty. An unspoken connection filled the space between them, a silent understanding. The fairy of the mountains did not think of showing herself to him in person, to give him a reason. That's why she had become a turtle dove and kept jumping in his way. The fairy did not know the customs of mortals, how to communicate, how to dress, how to become acquainted with such a prince. She found herself in unfamiliar territory. A few days after the king's son returned from hunting, a humble young woman arrived at the royal court seeking a position as a servant. A hen keeper was needed, so she was accepted. The cleanliness, good care, and love she gave to all the birds and hens in the royal court became a living story. The queen was so impressed that she spoke highly of the young girl's skills to the king every day, even though the girl was very poor and humble in her appearance and speech. Furthermore, the prince, having heard such good and righteous words about the poultry keeper, expressed a curiosity to meet her. One day, when the empress went to inspect the hens in coops, her son accompanied her. The hen keeper, upon seeing the prince, regarded him with comforting and loving, yet humble eyes that startled him slightly. The prince felt his cheeks burning. A cold sweat broke out, and his heart pounded as if it would burst from his chest. He could not imagine what the feeling was. He felt the same during that hunt. He lowered his eyes, said nothing, and returned home. But the weight of the unknown sensations pressed upon him. The whole royal court held the humble servant girl in high regard for her worthiness. She behaved well with all the servants, and no one dared to speak badly to her because she gave them no opportunity. Meanwhile, in a neighboring kingdom, a royal wedding was taking place. The prince was invited, as well as the king and his entire court. The king, full of joy, went to the wedding with his queen and his son. On that day, the henkeeper girl also asked the steward for permission to go for a walk. The steward, laughing, makes an ironic remark to the girl, saying something unkind about her humble looks. But the steward let her go. She avoided the confrontation, said nothing in reply, and left. At the wedding, the king was overjoyed to see that, among so many sons of kings and lords, his son stood out for his cleverness, wit, and wisdom. All the king's daughters wanted to dance with him. When a beautiful girl suddenly came to the wedding, she wore clothes unlike any the king's daughters had worn. It was a breathtaking sight, a vision of beauty that outshone even the finest silks and jewels. Her skillfully braided hair, thrown back, touched her thighs, and she walked with such grace that everyone's eyes were on her. The guests murmured their admiration, captivated by the unfamiliar splendor. She walked towards the prince and danced only beside him. They talked, laughed, and told each other all sorts of things, but rather discreetly, because the prince was ashamed to laugh and talk like that in front of his father. The king's son was no longer his. The prince himself was surprised by the change he felt inside, but he did not dare tell anyone. The prince had made up his mind that, at the last hour of the ball, he would ask this beautiful unknown girl who she was, where she came from, and whether she was married or not. He thought that if she were unmarried, he would propose to her. When the beautiful girl suddenly and mysteriously flew away, the prince remained bewildered. Now, the ballroom felt strangely empty to him. A chilling silence replaced the music and the laughter. He returned home, but his thoughts were still with her. His father, the great king, saw his son, thoughtful and sad, but did not know what to say or do to cheer him up. Perhaps it was just a fleeting moment. Soon after, the king was invited to another royal wedding, where he went with his queen and son. At this wedding, the prince danced with the same mysterious, beautiful girl. After many questions, he learned from her that she lived on his father's land, but she had not told him that she lived right next to him at the royal court. Hearing this, the prince promised to take her home if she were alone, and she accepted. But just as the wedding was about to end, the girl flew away from his side during the dance. The royal family's homecoming was overshadowed by a chilling discovery. The prince began inexplicably to melt before their eyes. The once vibrant air was now weak, a puddle of sorrow, and no one knew why or what to do. Even though everyone was gossiping about the king's son being in love with a fairy, the prince told his father he had no idea what they were talking about. The prince's weak condition remained a mystery, baffling the kingdom's most great minds. All the sorcerers and star readers came to the kingdom, but no one could guess the illness the prince was suffering from. Everyone hoped for a swift recovery and an end to the perplexing situation. But the king was invited to another royal wedding, which he did not want to attend because his heart was not in it. The king was very concerned about his son. However, seeing his son's insistence, The king finally compiled, but with an idea in his mind. The king ordered some of his faithful servants to have several tar boilers ready, to boil them on the wedding day, and when evening came, to spread them on the road. Having arranged all this, the royal family went to the wedding. As soon as the ball dance began, the beautiful and radiant unknown girl appeared as if from nowhere, and again she captivated the prince. This time, the girl was dressed even more beautifully. She wore clothes that shimmered like the sun. Such grace was a rare sight. The light seemed to dance around her, creating an ethereal glow. Every movement she made was graceful and fluid, like a willow in the breeze. The prince's gaze was fixed on her. He asked her a question, and she again answered him in 2 sentences. He promised to take her home, but it happened all the same. As the evening's last hour arrived, she flew away from him. It is impossible to describe how deeply sad the prince was. His despair was a palpable presence. From now on, he sought solace in his room and bed, a refuge from his grief. The world outside faded as he retreated into the depths of his heartbreak. A substantial reward was offered by the king for a successful treatment of his child's suffering. When his faithful servants arrived with a shoe, the mistress's shoe, if tar-stained, she probably decided it was better to leave it behind than to be caught. Then the king's son sent his faithful servants to go from kingdom to kingdom and have all the royal girls try on the shoe. The one whom it fitted would be his wife. The king also agreed to this decision. So they went around all lands trying the shoe on all women, but it suited none. Hearing this, the prince became even more ill. So then the king ordered all the ladies in the royal court to try it on, and guess what? None of them could fit into that gentle and beautiful shoe either. But the queen remembered. There was only the hen house, which they had forgotten. The king ordered her to put on the shoe as well. When she pulled it on by the heel, it seemed to fit. It was molded to her foot. But she began to whine and deny that it was not her shoe. The prince, upon hearing this, ordered her to be brought before him. When he saw the girl, he exclaimed, "This is the girl. This is the one." Although the girl denied it, she was quickened by the prayers of the king, queen, and their son, and finally confessed that she was a mysterious girl. Finally, she confessed that she was also the fairy of the mountains, that she had fallen in love with the prince ever since seeing him hunting in the forest. She said that he had wounded a turtle dove, which was her. Her secret was revealed. She did not appear to him because marrying a man would have lost her magic powers. The fairy also said she became a hen keeper to be near him, and that she did it all for his love. Then she went out, clapped her hands 3 times, and behold, a magic chariot appeared, without any horses. The chariot was full of riches. She took her dowry of only precious things. Then, with streams of tears flowing from her eyes, she turned and said to the prince, "For you, my love, I renounce my magic powers, but you must love me as much as I love you." She left the carriage and remained with the king's son, who soon recovered. The kingdom rejoiced as the royal wedding was announced, a celebration of love and unity. And after the king's death, they remained together on the kingdom's throne and still reign today. True love's legacy continues to inspire generations since true love never dies. The end.